Hello and welcome. This is Wilrens for Create a Learning Site, the place to go deeper in your understanding of the Bible. This time I kept it short. The title, that is. It's the shortest title I've had. It doesn't get much shorter than this. I also kept it small. After several issues dealing with an entire book of the Bible, this one is about a single word, and a short one at that. The conjunction for. More precisely, it is about the Greek conjunction most often translated into English with for. I will transliterate this Greek word as gar. A conjunction is a word that connects two parts of a sentence and defines the relationship between these two parts. The English word for normally indicates a reason for what is stated in the other part of the sentence. Traditionally, the Greek word gar has been understood similarly, as illustrated by this quotation from a Greek lexicon. Gar is used to introduce the reason for a statement, which usually precedes it. With this in mind, let's look at a small sample to demonstrate the importance of this conjunction. This is from Romans chapter 1. I'll first read it, and then I'll comment on the occurrences of for in this passage. Paul writes, I am under obligation both to Greeks and to barbarians, both to the wise and to the foolish, so I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. For I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith for faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because, and actually in the Greek this uses the same conjunction, gar, because, or for, God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. Well, this is quite a few occurrences in just a few sentences. Obviously, Paul is in explanation mode and provides reasons for what he is asserting. A brief comment on each appearance of for here. We start here. Why is Paul eager to preach the gospel? Well, the reason is he is not ashamed of the gospel. Why is he not ashamed of the gospel? The reason is it's God's power unto salvation. Why does the gospel have this power? This time the reason given is a little harder to understand, but again quite obviously a reason is given because in the gospel the righteousness of God is revealed. But then in Romans 1:18 things break down. We expect a reason why God's righteousness is revealed in the gospel. Paul's statement that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven does not seem to provide such a reason. To fully recognize the problem, let's turn the argument around. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against sin. For this reason, the righteousness of God is revealed. To put it bluntly, this does not make sense. I've always struggled with this seemingly illogical and disjointed step in Paul's argumentation. Interestingly, the NIV Bible does not even translate gar in Romans 1 verse 18. It simply leaves it out. That removes the problem from sight, but of course does nothing to solve it. I will come back to this verse. The next three occurrences of for are unproblematic again. Why is the wrath of God revealed? Or perhaps, how do we know people deliberately suppress the truth? The reason, I paraphrase, people should and could have known better. What can be known about God is plain. Now, strictly speaking, here the Greek text uses a different conjunction, not gar, but one with a similar meaning, and therefore I've left it in. Then we move on to because, which does translate the Greek conjunction gar. Why is it plain? The reason God has shown it. Then we have one more. How has he shown it? Why is it plain? Well, the reason humanity has always had a basic grasp of God's nature. The word gar is an important one in the Greek New Testament. According to Logos Bible software, it appears 1009 times. The ESV translates it with 972 times, and then an additional 22 times it uses a synonym such as since or because. This makes for remarkable consistency, leaving only 16 occurrences where a truly different translation is given. This illustration shows the distribution across books of the New Testament. The word appears most often in Romans. It also appears often in Matthew through Acts. However, we need to keep in mind that these are large books. Taking the size of books into consideration, it is striking how often the word appears in Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, and Hebrews. This makes sense. These are argumentative and explanatory books, and therefore include many reasons and explanations, and thus many occurrences of the Greek word gar. The remarkable consistency in translating gar does not necessarily mean the resulting text is always clear and unproblematic, as we noticed in Romans 1 verse 18. At this point, we run into the limitations of traditional grammar and syntax, that is, the rules for combining and arranging words and sentences. The limitations include a focus on form more than function, and on translation, and therefore meaning in the language of the interpreter. We want to know what the words mean in English. Modern linguistics takes a more functional approach to language. It seeks to define the task or function of various features. What is the word or phrase supposed to do? And does so in terms of the language itself, not a translator language. The results are described in what's often called a discourse grammar to distinguish it from the more traditional grammars. Looking at the conjunction gar through the framework of modern linguistics and discourse grammar provides us with a slightly broader definition of this word. Gar introduces material that strengthens or confirms a previous proposition. In other words, the information introduced does not advance the discourse, but adds background information that strengthens or supports what precedes. Seen in this light, it makes perfect sense that Paul begins Romans 1:18 with gar. He is not, strictly speaking, giving a reason that explains his previous assertion, but he is providing the necessary background information that helps us to understand why the new revelation of God's righteousness in the gospel was necessary. Paul provides us, in the continuation, with a bleak sketch of humanity's moral condition and God's response to it, so that we grasp more fully our need for the gospel, which is Paul's actual topic and to which he returns in Romans 3 verse 21. Here are two additional Greek conjunctions, kai and de. Kai is used over 8,000 times in the Greek New Testament. It's usually translated and about 6,000 times, but sometimes with but. Der is used over 2,000 times. It is either translated and or but, and sometimes with other words, or it is left untranslated. This looks messy. Why have two different words that can both mean and but? Here too, as with for, the problem is not with Greek language or vocabulary, but with translation. Discourse grammar provides a way out. The two words have distinct and well-defined functions in Greek. Unfortunately, this does not easily translate into English, but for a Greek reader there was no messiness at all. De indicates the author is moving on and is adding something new. Kai does not. Or, in the words of discourse grammar, Kai connects two items of equal status, constraining them to be closely related to one another. And De is a coordinating conjunction like Kai, but it includes the added constraint of signaling a new development. Kai, on the other hand, is unmarked for development. The use of de represents the writer's choice to explicitly signal that what follows is a new, distinct development in the story or argument based on how the writer conceived of it. This explains why translators waver between and, but, and several less frequent terms. Whether the items linked by either kai or de have a contrasting sense, and therefore are best translated but, or not, and therefore translating and makes more sense, is determined by content and context, and it's not indicated by the term used. This makes and but poor substitutes for the two Greek terms. The closest equivalent in English for de would be then or now to indicate a new development, as in this sentence. I talked to the boss, but he wouldn't listen to me. Now, I don't know what more we can do. Let's make the best of it, then. Now, let's move on to the next topic, then. You probably noticed the problem. If a speaker or a text used then or now in English as often as the Greeks used de, this would sound rather strange. Such is the challenge of every translator. There's no perfection in this world, and there certainly is no perfection in translation.
The show will be starting in just a few moments. Thank you for your patience. The show will be starting in just a few moments.